Hi guys, today we are going to talk about something a little bit different, and it's going to be all about the making of an album that I recorded back in 2021. The album is called Wonderful World, and it is this record right here. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. I want to talk about this because this is what we sometimes call a vanity record. Basically, I had this idea that I wanted to make a record for me as much as anybody else. I mean, this entire project was something that's very out of the norm of, an album I might release. Anyway, so let's talk about how it all came to be. I grew up, as some of you know, playing straight ahead jazz, classical music as well, but I studied a lot of bebop. And so growing up, when I came out of music college, I played a lot of jazz standards, and I got to know a few, and it was very comfortable for me. And after all these years of playing my own music, I wanted to go back and make a record. And I've wanted to do this for a long, long time. I mean, probably for the last 20 years. I wanted to make a record with an orchestra and a trio. And in this particular instance, I wanted to have not a keyboard player, but a string orchestra providing all the harmony behind my guitar playing. So, it was wide open for me to do whatever I wanted on the guitar without clashing with anything. And then the strings would basically weave in and out of what I was doing. And that was the whole idea. Anyway, so I started doing this here in my studio a couple of years before, probably about a year before we did go to record it. And I basically had samples of an upright bass player and samples of a straight ahead jazz player playing drums. And I would literally play these jazz standards in my studio and record to these samples, and I would lock in the arrangement, which was very traditional. There's nothing, I would write an intro and an outro and play the head and then improvise in the middle. And I would leave all this space for these strings, which I started arranging here in my studio at a very basic level because I wanted to see the effect and how it would sound, So I did the rough layout here. I made demos of every single song, and there were songs like How Insensitive. Let's look at the titles here. Green Dolphin Street, Night and Day, What a Wonderful World, Estarte, Alfie, My Foolish Heart. I mean, all just very famous songs from the American songbook. One year I went to London to do my annual stint of shows, probably at the Pizza Express Jazz Club. My colleague over there, who books me for all my shows, is a gentleman by the name of Mayank Patel. And we've done a few projects together. In fact, another one was the Live in London project. So we have collaborated on a couple of things. And we work together every year on my live shows. So one day I was on the phone to him, and I was basically saying, I've got this idea. I really want to make this orchestral album. But it's so expensive, and it's such a lavish, ambitious project. I don't know how to pull it off. And he said, well, Chris, what do you need? So we did this deal where we basically went into a partnership on this record, and he would finance the orchestra side of it, and I would finance the rhythm section over here. And we would have a project. And literally within 10 minutes, we had a deal. And I said, this sounds fantastic. So I went to work, came back. But actually, while I was in London, I called my good friend Jeff Gascoigne, who is a fantastic bass player. I particularly love his upright playing, but he's a great electric player too. But not only that, he is an outstanding arranger and orchestrator. And I've known Jeff for a long, long time. I played him my demos, and he said they sound great. But he said, I think the orchestra stuff could really go up a notch. And immediately I said, well, let's work together on this. This would be fantastic. So we did a deal. And before you know it, Jeff was going to town, rewriting the string parts, and I basically gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wanted, as long as he sort of, referenced basically my overall idea, which was this thing about, the strings providing the harmony and weaving in and out of my guitar playing. Anyway, so I came back to LA, and guess what happened? COVID. So we were in lockdown for a couple of years, and there was no gigs for anybody. And I thought, fantastic, let's get in the studio and let's really get to grips with this. So it was around that time that, I finished out all the parts, and Jeff and I were going back and forward with the string arrangements. And before you know it, we had a set of final parts, and we decided to book Abbey Road in London to record all the orchestra, which I thought, oh my God, this is fantastic. Well, that's where the Beatles recorded all their albums, and I thought, why can't we do this? Anyway, so guess what happened to me? I had a heart attack. Now, before you start getting all crazy and worried, it was actually one artery that was blocked, and they put a stent in. All my other arteries were perfectly fine, so I'm hoping that actually everything's fine now. But the point of the matter is, not only was it COVID, I was still going to fly over, but I had this heart attack, and I immediately went, okay, this is the universe saying, you got to sit down. So I couldn't go to Abbey Road, and I was mortified, as you can imagine. But I was there on Zoom, and Jeff, who is this just super consummate orchestrator and conductor, he had the whole thing completely organized. And it was wonderful to watch. He'd booked the best players you could wish to find in London. And the whole thing sounded like $1 million. And I was so excited. In fact, let's have a little chat with Jeff right now, and he can tell you his side of the story.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Jeff, how are you, man?
I'm good, yeah. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Listen, let's get straight into it. How did we originally meet? How long have I known you?
I think we probably met in the 90s, briefly in London when you lived here.
No, 80s.
80s? Oh, is it that long?
Yep.
Oh my God. Okay, well, briefly in the 80s. And then when did you disappear?
I left
right?
I left February 91.
Right.
But I know I knew you in the 80s, but did we ever do any gigs or anything? I can't even remember.
I don't remember.
No. Anyway, whatever. So listen, we're talking about the Wonderful World project from a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
And you came on board as the main principal orchestrator, and you also played some bass on it. But I'm very interested to know, because I've always known you as a bass player, how did you get into orchestration, and what led to all of that?
Well, what happened, I was playing with Jamie Cullum for many years. As you know, he's an English jazz singer. I had about 8 years or so. As I was finishing that, I got a contact into the library world. Library music, which is production music, which is used for TV and adverts and films and so on. So I started getting seriously into arranging then. And I did some big bands and some string writing. And it really started there. So that was probably 25 years ago, something like that. And I got the chance to work with some big bands and write for strings and all sorts of really interesting things. So I started taking it really seriously from that point. I was always a writer, a composer, and arranger, but never for larger ensembles. So I always wrote for small band jazz and things like that, and horn sections and things. So it was a real thrill, to be able to come along and go to Abbey Road and record the strings.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
But I mean, did you learn orchestration, or is this something that you figured out on your own? Was it just listening?
I just listened. I just did a bit of listening. I got a load of books, along here.
Yeah.
You got Nelson Riddle and all the great arrangers. So I think that the important thing about that is when I started writing library is you have to make kind of pastiches of music. So I would take down ideas from Nelson Riddle and so on and put them in my own work. Mm-hmm. So really that's how I got to do it. I just imitated the greats, really. I mean, I never had any instruction or any tuition about arranging at all.
Yeah. So we got together and decided that we were going to do this very strange project because I wanted like a trio setting with orchestra to surround the harmony. I didn't want any piano getting in the way. I literally wanted the harmony to come from the strings. Yeah. So which you took on wonderfully. I mean, you went gun-ho with it. But what were the challenges for you with a project sonically of that nature?
Well, the great thing about this was I already had a form to work inside. And I had guitar and I had guitar solos. I'm filling all the gaps. Right, filling out the harmony, the middle part.
Yeah, because everything was already recorded, wasn't it?
Yeah, and what also was lovely about that is I was able to pick out little nuances in some of the solos that you played. You probably weren't aware of it, but some of the little licks and things that you played, I would kind of augment with the strings and the harp. I believe there's a harp.
Yeah, it's quite audible. On the album.
But it was a blank canvas, to be honest. It really was. So it was a dream to do.
And were there any albums that you referenced for ideas for this project?
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to Nelson Riddle. Really.
Yeah,
that's the things with Sinatra, the way he would augment the singer. You get the singer singing something, and then the strings would kind of echo things. Very traditional kind of writing, really, and supportive writing. I suppose. Yeah.
So anyway, while that was all going on at Abbey Road, I was recording the rhythm section here. I basically called as many famous guys as I could in that straight ahead genre to play and replace all my samples and give it some life. And let me tell you who I got on this record. Randy Brecker, probably the most famous trumpet player alive today, and probably the best too, and he came in and played on one song. My friend Catherine Shaw, who's a wonderful singer, she sang on a song called What a Wonderful World. Peter Erskine, don't get much of a better drummer than Peter, he played on a few tracks. Harvey Mason played on half the album, another great drummer. A bass player called Chuck Berghofer played bass on this album. Now he is the guy responsible for the bass part on Nancy Sinatra's These Boots Are Made for Walking. So you all know Chuck's playing, and he's well into his 80s, and he's playing incredible still to this day. So that was wonderful. Derek Oles also played upright bass on I think 2 tracks. Fantastic. And my good friend David Carasoni played drums on 1 song. And of course, Jeff Gascoigne played bass on a couple of tracks too. So I got the most unbelievable rhythm section to play on this record. And it really, really did sound fantastic. So Jeff sent me back all the orchestra parts. He was actually kind enough to make stereo stems, which basically meant instead of sending me this whole list of individual parts, he sent me a stereo stem of the orchestra, which meant all I had to do was drop it into my mix. So this album was actually quite an easy album to mix because he had already mixed the strings. And I just mixed the rhythm section in. And it sounded like $1 million to me. I just absolutely loved it. We ended up really going to town with the packaging. In fact, you can see that this is the vinyl version here, and it's got like a gatefold and all this. You know what I mean? I mean, we really went to town. It was a horribly expensive record to make. Absolutely, no question, the most expensive record I've ever made. And then we released it to jazz radio, straight ahead jazz, not smooth jazz. It was actually, it did okay, got on the chart, on the jazz chart. It didn't really make much noise. I feel like in hindsight that it was kind of in the sort of Nelson Riddle, almost Diana Krall genre, which is not smooth and it's not really straight ahead. So it's much like a lot of my music. It falls between the cracks, But that's okay. I ended up releasing a record that I absolutely am so proud of. I think it's an album I don't have to make anymore. I've done it, I went to London and we performed the entire album from top to toe live at Cadogan Hall in Chelsea, complete with an orchestra, harpist, rhythm section, and guest singer, Joe Harrop. And it was really, really a difficult concert for me because, I've probably mentioned this before, but when I get to play with my band, I play my music all the time. It's kind of second nature. But when you're playing music like this, it's very, very detailed. It's very intense. I've got to remember all these very complicated songs. And of course, you can't mess up in any way because the orchestras are all reading from music and they can't stop reading the music. So it's not like, a pop rhythm section where you just listen to the lead singer or the lead musician and you can just get back on track. So no, everything has to be absolutely exact. So everything had to be rehearsed to the letter in order to pull something like this off. So I was very, very proud of that. I think it all came out fantastic. And that's about the size of it. That's what happened with this record. If you haven't heard it, it is available, as I said, on vinyl. Actually, I think I might have sold out of vinyl. I might have to reorder. Anyway, it's on compact disc. It's on streaming everywhere. So do yourself a favor, go check it out. And perhaps we'll do another one of these again soon, talk about a different record. Who knows? All right, guys. See you later.